If you're as old as I am, you will remember that back in the 70s and 80s, long tele lenses were extremely expensive, and they're more reserved for professional journalists or sports photographers alike. So, general photographers would just basically get priced out, and they weren't able to afford any of those lenses. However, lens maker had a solution. They make reflex lenses for these people while keeping the cost down so they can all try a little bit of a long telefocal length. And today we're looking at such lens, and this is Kase 200mm f5.6 for modern digital mirrorless cameras. Hi, it's Cheng here from RED35. Today, we are looking at something rather unusual, perhaps even rare in this day and age. Yes, I mentioned about reflex lenses, and they are really a rare breed these days, and they have kind of disappeared altogether from the market, simply because zoom lenses or tele lenses has become so affordable, they are most likely included in the kit that you purchase with the camera. But why do they still need something like this? And I would say that, well, for artistic reasons. So before I talk to you guys about the artistic side of a reflex lens, let me remind you what benefits a mirror lens or reflex lens can give you photographers. So one of the main benefits of a reflex lens is, of course, its form factor. Just look at this guy here. This is a 200mm lens. When you compare to a general zoom or even a 200mm prime lens, you'll find that they're at least double the length and also double the weight. Second, it has to be the cost. Although it's a little bit harder to say these days, just remember what I said earlier in the video talking about lens maker make these reflex lenses to make them more accessible to general photographers. So this day and age is slightly different because we have kit lenses which are okay in terms of optical quality, but they're definitely very, very cheap, or at least cheaper than before. But if we compare to prime lenses, for instance, and most of them are still relatively expensive. So when you compare to prime lens and this, yeah, this is still have a little bit of a benefit in terms of cost over the traditional prime lenses. Now let's take a look at the artistic side of what a mirror lens or reflex lens can give you in digital photography. A lot of the old school manual photographers, analog photographers would agree that some of the features or some of the characteristics of a mirror lens may not be as suitable as what they may like for a certain type of photography. However, for those keen artistic eyes, they may still want to keep one or two of these lenses in their arsenal of lenses to create some specific projects. And this is something that I want to talk about in today's video. In the last few years, you see a resurgence of vintage-looking lenses. And I'm not talking about the appearance of the lens itself, but more to do with the actual rendering. The likes of Pastel lenses and some of the old Russian optics being renovated and reinvented, remade, rebuilt by lomography, for instance. And even some of the modern digital photographers will adapt some of these old-school 1950s and 60s optics to their digital cameras for such projects. And this is exactly the reasons why I think the Kase 200mm f5.6 reflex lens has a unique proposition right here. Right, there are many reflex lenses out there anyway, you know, by any manufacturer. So, you know, they're kind of like a unique, well, kind of niche breed out there, which is kind of cool. And I think that from the images I created just by testing the lens over the last few weeks, and I think that this is actually something to behold of. You know, you're going to have to try this and see it yourself to see whether these sort of images is to your liking. If you like what I display in this particular video, you may want to check this out yourself. Well, when I say rendering, first of all, reflex lenses does give you some really unique character. There are two things here. First of all is, of course, the famous rain bokeh. This is not something that you can regenerate or try to recreate in post-production. So this is something directly coming from the lens. A little bit like pastel lenses, you know, the swirly bokeh is only something you can do with the optics itself, not something that you can kind of recreate with some of this fake bokeh software that you can get on the market. So they are unique, they are special, and you can get it only with the lens you use. Second characteristics has to be the rather low contrast images that the lens produces. Well, yeah, this is certainly something that kind of remind you of some of the older 50s and 60s lenses because they were designed for low light capabilities back in the slow film days. Yeah, I'm talking about like, film used to be like ISO 400 and 800, they are not fast by any means. So you need some sort of low contrast to kind of boost the shadow areas so you can kind of still capturing some of the details in the darker areas. In modern digital photography, it may not matter that much, but like I said, this is something of the look that it produces. A lot of people like having the kind of vintage look in post-production. They like to drag up the fading slide, kind of give you that low contrast look. You don't need to do that. This will just give you that. But if you want a punchy look, you actually have that option simply by increasing the contrast or even by sliding the clarity and also the dehaze in post. You're going to get a sharp, punchy image. Third characteristics, well, it will have to be the combination of the first two characteristics. It's the combined rendering that gives you that unique look of what a mirror lens can give you. And I was shooting portrait with Rod the other day, and I find that the images it produces is relatively sharp. It's not clinically sharp like, some of the modern digital lenses, but certainly sharp enough, I would call it, for a good portrait lens. But the look, it's the look that gives me that kind of unique organic thing that I used to get from film photography. I'm not talking about the bokeh rendering at the back, but in terms of the in-focus area, and that is very unique to a mirror lens or a reflex lens, and I find it extremely interesting. So I think in general, these sort of characteristics that I just mentioned will really give you some edge when it comes to producing something unique, maybe something just slightly out of the ordinary that you see on some of the modern digital photography. So I really enjoy using the Kase 200mm 5.6 right here. This is by far the best reflex lens I have ever used, period. I've used many in the past, including Tokinas and the Micro Four Thirds in some of my older SLRs, including some of the major brand ones as well, like the Canon and the Nikon reflex lenses. Nothing can match the quality coming from Kase, which is quite surprising because, like I said before, this is the very first lens that Kase ever made, so which is something to be screaming about. But there are a couple of deal breakers, perhaps potential deal breakers for you guys. So I'm going to talk to you guys about that. First of all is the fixed aperture. This is a fixed 5.6, so you just have to bear that in mind when you're coming to, let's say, filming something or photographing something in low light. You have to push your ISO to be able to maintain enough shutter speed for it to work. And this is a 200mm, remember? So if your camera doesn't have a good IBIS or not sufficiently stabilized, you will find a lot of shaky images if you don't have a fast shutter speed. So something that just to remember that. But having said that though, almost all mirror lenses you see on the market, used or new, will be f8. So there are a couple of stops slower than this. So this is actually pretty good. Second, we have to be the close focusing distance capability. Well, this lens doesn't focus close at all. You have to step quite far away from the subject to be able to nail the focus, which is a little bit poor by modern digital standard. But having said that, this is still a 200mm lens, which is quite long, so you can still get some really nice close-up looking shots with that distance. So that's it, folks. This is the review of the Kase 200mm 5.6 Reflex. And I really enjoy this lens. I love it. And so I would recommend to any photographer who may want something slightly different to their photography. And one thing I would like to say to Kase though, if you can make a Micro Four Thirds mount as well, so I can try on my OM system or any other Micro Four Thirds cameras I have. So that's it. You know what to do now. Give me a thumb if you like this video and sub if you want to stay in touch with all things photography and filmmaking. And don't forget it, put some comments down below to let me know your comments and also your thoughts about this particular reflex lens here. So until next time, I'll see you all very soon. Peace.